Here we go. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of What's Next, Life After Sports. My name is Louis Baker. I'll be your host today. Joining me is an incredible guest that I'm super excited to have here today, Brandon Ancona, longtime friend of mine. We went to college together. Brandon played tennis whilst I was on the baseball team. He has an incredible journey and testimony that I'm super excited to dive into today. But without further ado, Brandon, how are you?
Doing good, Louis. This is a pleasure to be on a podcast with you. This is awesome.
Absolutely, man. I'm so excited about it. Well, Brandon, typically how this works is we have the guests walk through a background a little bit. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about how you got into tennis. I know you played golf and tennis, so talk us through that. And then, we'll talk a little bit about how you got through the recruiting process, both into Valpo and then also you moved over to Notre Dame. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's start with a little bit about how you fell in love with tennis, and how you ended up deciding that that's something you wanted to play in college.
Yeah, started playing tennis ever since I could hold a racket. I've actually got a fun picture. I was probably 2 or 3 years old, and I'm holding a tennis racket right next to a basket of tennis balls. So me and tennis, I guess, go way back. Also, some fun pictures. My dad and my mom feeding me tennis balls. Ever since, yeah, like I said, could hold a racket. Ever since I was 5, 6. I started playing tournaments when I was 7, I believe. That was my first tournament. Played a grade eights tournament, so 8 and under. So grew up totally, destined to at least be decent at tennis. My parents both met playing tennis. They have wedding pictures on the tennis court, so definitely come from a tennis background. And yeah, grew up playing it. And you also mentioned golf. Grew up playing golf as well as other sports, but it was kind of primarily tennis and golf. And tennis was always, the primary sport as I grew up.
That's awesome. So you were really destined to play tennis, having your parents meet on the tennis court. That's incredible. All right, so talk to me a little bit about you played tennis and you played golf. You're obviously very good at both, but how did you decide that tennis was going to be the sport that you played in college?
Yeah. So I would say initially, like I said, tennis was always primary sport. It was up until maybe I was 12 or 13 years old where I started enjoying golf almost too much, almost more than tennis, and was starting to tinker around with the idea of, you know, can I play golf in college? I didn't know at the time. I really was loving golf. I was always way better at tennis than golf. But I remember my first 3 years of high school, so up until senior year, I played tennis and golf in high school. And it was my junior year of high school that I played golf on the team. It was in the fall, and I missed state by one stroke. And I think it was pretty. I don't know why, but just at that point, it was came to me much more clear that what am I doing playing golf? I'm much better at tennis. Like I should keep focused on tennis and play tennis actually in college versus, doing something else. So, it was kind of a back and forth for a little while because I had started tennis and done so much tennis at a young age. I think there was a period of being burnt out, and I looked to golf during those burnt out phases. I also looked to like fishing I was into archery, I was into basketball. I had these other interests that was kind of pulling me away from tennis. But I think subtly throughout high school, I started to realize, tennis is really where I perform best in and have the best odds of playing in college.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I know what you mean by getting a little too addicted to golf. I too, obviously, you are fully aware of that
Oh
phase.
yeah,
Um, don't know if you might have even been sort of an antagonist to that phase,
it's
having
an
me out
addicting
there.
sport. It's a lot of
Oh,
fun.
oh, it's incredible. Absolutely love it. But anyway, so talk us through your recruitment process. So you went to Valpo, you're from Illinois, so not too far away, but talk me through your recruitment process and how you landed at Valpo.
Yeah, I think, seeing my brother's 3 years older than me, and he played tennis in college. He played at a Division III school, named Wheaton College in, kinda Chicago suburb area. And as I said, he's 3 years older, so really around my freshman and sophomore year of high school, like, I started thinking about playing college tennis. Like, what does that look like? I wanna be like my older brother. And, at that point, I think I had clarity that like, I was thinking I was gonna play college, tennis, but I think I didn't know necessarily if I was gonna play Division III or Division II or Division I or what that looked like. It was really my junior year, where I would say I had the most improvement, from just a perspective of, playing summer tournaments and playing tournaments throughout the year. Like, I had some good results where I felt like there was a chance I could play Division I tennis, right? And so after my junior year and kind of beginning of my senior year was when I was going through the recruiting process and looking and checking out schools that I potentially would be a fit for. My goal all along was I wanted to play on the team. I didn't want to just be on a team. I wanted to be playing in the lineup. I wanted to be doing what I loved, which was competing. I didn't want to be on the sidelines. So I would have always picked a Division III school or a Division II school over a Division I that I wouldn't be playing on. But part of the recruiting process, coaches began to believe in me, and I began to believe that okay, I could play Division I and be in the lineup and be playing every match. Um, I'd say the two. I mean, the recruiting process was. Um, I'm trying to think of the recruiting process, like summary. They're at tournaments, right? Different coaches are at tournaments. I think initially I thought I was a little bit gravitating towards some of the Big East schools because they had good tennis programs. But what I liked about them was they were smaller schools, relatively smaller schools. A lot of them are, I guess, under 10,000 enrollment, and they had really good athletics. So some of their basketball teams were really good, and that's what I loved. I loved watching basketball. So that was, I remember touring Xavier and Butler, talking to some of the coaches there, as well as Liberty University. So Liberty University is a larger Christian college out of in Virginia. So I went and did an official tour there. Loved Liberty. Thought it was an awesome school, awesome program. And then I was almost going to cancel my visit to Valparaiso because I was so set on Liberty. And I decided not to. And I went to Valpo. And I think just seeing the culture, the team, the coach, specifically, the coach was incredible at recruiting. I mean, he had kind of changed and transformed the tennis program at Valpo from being a very mediocre team to a top-notch mid-major, program that was competing with some of the biggest schools. So that excited me, as well as, like I said, when I went on the visit, I noticed just an amazing culture on the team of um, primarily all players that were in the Midwest area too. So what that brought was it was really cool. You had parents and family almost at every single match, right? Whereas some of these other teams, tennis, especially Division I tennis, it's pretty common to have a good bit of players come internationally. So you had players all over the nation, and I didn't necessarily see that team camaraderie at some of these other schools that I visited, which really attracted me, I think, to Valpo, and eventually, helped me in committing, to go to Valpo.
That's an incredible story, and I agree with the parent and family support and sort of the local support being there is pretty awesome. I'd say the same thing about the baseball team. There were an awful lot of guys from the Midwest, and their families would go and they'd grill out in left field, and it really was an incredible experience from a support standpoint. I really enjoyed that, getting to know not just the players, but also their families. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really interesting point and not something that I think is appreciated enough sort of in the mid-major realm. But yeah, hey, great. Talk me through what did you major in again? I don't remember what you majored in.
Yeah, so majored in computer science. I
Yep.
kind of went into school thinking I wanted to do something technical, but also be kind of on the business side. So I was thinking I would minor in computer science and major in some business field, but I actually ended up majoring in computer science. I was thinking I was going to minor in business, but then did not. Just focused on, yeah, majoring in computer science.
Okay, cool. And then you from there transitioned over to Notre Dame, and you played there for your senior year, redshirt senior. I know COVID played into this, so talk
Yeah.
me through that a little bit. And then what degree did you do at Notre Dame?
Yeah. So it was our senior year, around December time, when we had our athletic director come to us and essentially explain to us that the men's soccer and men's tennis team was being cut effective the next year. So for me as a senior, obviously I was extremely bummed, but it wasn't going to directly impact me. I had my senior season; they were still allowing us to play. But as you mentioned, fast forward to March of 2020, as many people remember, that's when COVID hit. The world kind of flipped upside down. And our tennis season, which is primarily in the spring, was cut short. And essentially, they gave all tennis players another year of eligibility. At that point, and I give you the context of our tennis team being cut because I think it would have probably been a no-brainer. I would have stayed at Valpo and done another year with some of my other teammates, and we had an amazing culture, amazing team. I had amazing teammates and friends. But with the tennis team being cut, that's where I said, okay, I'll look at I'll put my name in the transfer portal and just see what happens, and from there, had interest at several different other teams, other colleges. Um, it's funny, and I'll actually rewind a little bit. This is a big part of my recruiting story. I shared at Valpo, the coach was a big deal. Was a huge factor in me choosing Valpo. Well, that coach, he was actually the interim head coach that was going to be taking over as the primary head coach until beginning of August, where when I'm about to go to Valpo, he actually called and said he's taking a role as a coach at Baylor. So
Dude,
that
same thing
was
happened to me.
yeah, that was super difficult. Like I genuinely remember tears shed in a car as I was, super pumped. I had my life figured out. I was going to Valpo, committed. I was super bought in on this vision that this interim head coach who was going to be taking over, the vision that he had casted on this team and how he's changed the team, so forth, that he was leaving. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, do I still go to Valpo? Do I not? I mean, but school was starting in 3 weeks. So obviously I still went. I say this whole story because ironically, when I put my name in the transfer portal, he was one of the first ones that sent me a message, and he was at Baylor, and he said, "Hey, you can still come to play with me and play for me, and we'd love to have you on the team." So I looked at Baylor University for a little while, looked at Purdue as well, and kind of just fell at Notre Dame. It was obviously I knew a great academic school, and they had a 1 year master's program. It was a master's of science and management, which was pretty much a 1 year MBA. And it really just checked a lot of the boxes. Another great team camaraderie was awesome there. The team was super close. And I liked that it was still in the Midwest. I loved, having my family was super involved in coming to matches. I had friends coming to matches. So that was something that was, super exciting to continue as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you graduated with a master in management from Mendoza? That's the business school there,
Correct.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Correct.
Mendoza. Yeah, they have a great reputation. So talk to me a little bit. So tennis at this point sounds like it was a very, I mean, it clearly was massive in your life, and a huge driving factor for a lot of your decisions to go to colleges, and look at colleges. So, talk to me a little bit about coming off of tennis. So, you did not play and you did not decide to go play professionally on the circuit. So, you decided, okay, hey, I'm going to move forward with a professional career in the corporate world, but not on the court. So, talk to me a little bit about coming to grips with that transition. When did you decide that would be the transition you were going to make, and how did you handle that?
Yeah. I think for most of my life, besides maybe when I was, 8 years and younger, for most of my life, I didn't necessarily dream to be a professional athlete. I loved sports and I loved tennis, and I was always just focused on the process and pursuing excellence and, showing up and doing my absolute best. But I would say, honestly, I think my parents and my dad had a very kind of shared a very realistic expectations of professional athletes. I think as we're young, it's really easy to glorify a professional athlete and the life that they have. But I think my dad, not necessarily saying he said to not pursue professional sports, I think he had a realistic side of it where he kind of shed light on the difficult life that it is and how it would be difficult to be traveling a ton and have a family. And so I think kind of the combination of these things, as well as never thinking that maybe I would be able to play professionally, I would say I didn't have a large desire. But I would say, certainly I've thought about it and questioned it. After having some success in college, my junior year at Valpo was a successful, good year, and then going to Notre Dame and kind of playing at the next level and being able to play in the lineup was, obviously another big milestone. I had a lot of teammates that I knew, especially at Notre Dame, that was going on to pursue playing professionally. So it was definitely a thought, but in my mind, I had a lot of contentment and peace at kind of transitioning into more of a normal world. I think parts of that was I was dating my now wife, Alicia, and I was excited about like family, and I was excited about having a spouse and being home and cultivating this great like family relationship, as well as injuries. Injuries, I think, made it more and more clear to me that this is not something I wanted to pursue, um, or could pursue. It was the summer before going to Notre Dame. I'd gotten an MRI and I had a torn hip labrum, and I had FAI, femur acetabular impingement, which isn't super uncommon, but just things that make you go, okay, my body's maybe not holding up the best. And I had kind of the choice of, do I get surgery but not really know the recovery, even though I'm getting ready to play at Notre Dame, or do I continue along and the doctor said it's probably not going to get worse. So I did continue along. I still haven't gotten surgery today, whether that's a good or bad thing. But I've been able to manage and maintain, just manage the symptoms. But that being said, during my matches at Notre Dame, like I would have pain after the matches and pain more than, the typical pain and soreness, which made it super clear. Like I was not interested in, grinding out the professional career of traveling and, playing tournaments and matches after match.
Yep. No, totally get it. I can completely empathize with the whole injury bug. My
Yeah.
career was entirely riddled by injuries, unfortunately. But yeah, it's not fun. But it definitely is something that helps you cast this new view of, okay, well, maybe professional sports is not for me. So, which kind of brings us to our next topic, which I want to talk about with you is the transition. So,
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about recruiting. You've been with one company, it's a massive tech company that everyone would know who they are. But I believe you're a solutions consultant, solutions engineer. So,
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about your leaving Notre Dame. you're realizing, okay, I'm going to be heading to the corporate world. Professional tennis is not in the cards for me. My body's not holding up. But how do I go about deciding what I want to do next with my career?
Yeah, I think the COVID, 1 year of extension and doing the master's program really helped me identify that I did not want to do something solely technical. Computer science background. Most people go into like software engineering. I kind of was realizing I did not want to do that. I wasn't super strong at coding or developing, and the 1 year master's at Notre Dame was super helpful in kind of shedding light on the business side of the world. And really, that solution consultant role kind of fell in my lap through some connections through family. My sister and my dad were involved in a company that implemented the software that I actually work for currently, which is ServiceNow. So they had known about this software. They kind of had known about some of these different roles, and this role was exactly that. It was a role that tied my technical background with some of the sales or business background that I had just received from Notre Dame. And it was something that I had actually had an offer with Deloitte to be in the consulting world, and ServiceNow. The went through the interview process kind of at the last hour of things, and as I learned more and more, I just was really felt peace that like this is the role that makes the most sense for me. The biggest drawback was I had to move across the country to Boston, and I felt like, oh my gosh, like I didn't necessarily see that coming, but it was an awesome adventure that I was excited about too, and was like, all right, let's do it. And yeah, moved to Boston and accepted that ServiceNow role to be a solution consultant.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Looking back at that, how do you think you handled that transition? I mean, you talked about moving to the other side of the country. I know you took your now wife with you. So I mean, that must have been exciting going to the other side of the country with your newly wed wife. But also, you're starting a new job, new city, new friends. But talk to me a little bit about how you made that transition successful and what skills do you think you took from your sporting days that helped you translate a successful start to your professional career?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was really faith driven, faith oriented. A big part of at least in my life is faith, and part of that Boston move was like the very first thing we prioritized was how can we get plugged into a church and plugged into a community. And I guess you could relate that to tennis and kind of the sporting world as you know, you spend every day with people going through and practicing your sport. For me, that was tennis. I spent a ton of time with teammates, and I built that camaraderie, and that community is super important for building you up and holding you. And it was kind of the same for faith in some ways. Is we looked at it as like faith is the most important thing to us, so we might as well, and we should, and we need to be doing this alongside other teammates per se, or other people in Boston, and building community that way. So we were lucky enough to kind of get plugged into a church, and I remember we went to a church obviously on Sunday, and we talked to someone after, and obviously on Sunday. But yeah, we went to church on Sunday. We talked to some people after on like how can we get plugged in? We like the church. How can we get plugged in? They talked about a small group that met the very next night. So they met on Monday nights, and they said, you could show up. Here's the address. We kind of took a leap of faith and showed up. And I remember leaving that night, Monday night, after just a Bible study small group. With some individuals that were similar age as us. We got in the car and we felt like these are our next best friends. Like this is what's going to get us through, this transition into a new city and into a new life in a lot of ways. And really it proved out, we were only in Boston for about a year, but it felt like we were in Boston for much more than a year because of the relationships that were built and really founded through that church community that we were involved in.
Man, I love that. That is incredible, and I do think relating that a little bit to my life and my transition when I made the move down to Charlotte and I realized that, hey, I don't really have the infrastructure that I had with baseball and college, that I don't know if you remember the men's group that
Yeah.
we
Oh yeah.
started. Yeah, that we started
It's
down
mostly
here.
you.
But
Oh yeah.
yeah, no, it was amazing, but, that infrastructure, that backbone was so helpful sort of in getting, that transition to be a little more smooth, for me, so, yeah, I completely understand putting a community around you, and I do think that's a really good advice for people who are making the transition out of college and professional sports is realizing that, hey, you've had a village and a community supporting you throughout the last X amount of years. You're about to embark on this new journey. Get yourself into a really good community and a really good group, whether that's through your church, whether that's through local small circles, small groups, or like local rec leagues, whatever you can to surround yourself with people that are going to be really supportive of you as you make this transition. Cannot, cannot overstate that enough and how
Yeah.
important that is. But yeah,
Yeah.
um,
100%.
talk to me a little bit about some things from the aspect of I didn't do that bit all that well when I made the transition. I know when I look back to my transition out of sports and into the corporate world, I definitely had some bumps along the way. What are some bumps that you experienced that you overcame?
Yeah. I think first thing that comes to my mind would be just saying yes too soon, or answering questions before you understand the question. Those are two things that kind of come to my mind. I think as athletes, we're hard coded in our brains to take on every and any challenge, and that's a good thing. I mean, it's absolutely a good thing, but I think making sure in the business world, making sure that there's proper preparation, or what we call in sales discovery. Right, we understand the issue, we understand what we're getting into. I think helps a lot. Um, I'd also say the other thing that was difficult or was a struggle as part of the transition was, you know, understanding that in our jobs or in the business world, I think there's a lot more luck involved than there is potentially in sport. I felt like when I was um, practicing and playing tennis, like I was going in, it was a one on one. You're on the court, and it was if whoever is the best player is going to win. In business, you're put in sometimes difficult scenarios, difficult circumstances, could be difficult customers. And it was just kind of the hand that was drawn. And obviously, you could draw parallels to sport in those similar ways, right? We have injuries, there's difficult scenarios, maybe it's raining, maybe it's windy, whatever it is. But I think, in my mind, it was harder to have a direct correlation to how much time and effort I was putting in to necessarily success. So just learning that kind of that new thing, moving into the professional world, and moving away from athletics.
That one's really good. I have actually never heard anyone say that before, so I love that. Yeah, as Yogi Berra said, when it comes to luck a little bit, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes it rains. So
Yep.
you never know what you're gonna get. But no, that is absolutely terrific. I love that. Um, Talk to me a little bit about how you've gone about making friends and with coworkers. I know you're at a very large company, so you've got a lot of people your age, but you've also got a lot of people not your age. But talk to me a little bit about, okay, I've made the transition out of sport. I've made the transition into my company now. How do I make friends? And how have you gone about doing that?
Yeah, I would say I've got no, fancy magical recipe. I think it's just being personal and, trying to go out of your way to make friends. It's a weird world. I work fully remote. I will be on site or in person maybe once a month, maybe once every other month. So, I work remotely, and I have customers spread out across the country, and coworkers that are oftentimes not necessarily, in the same area. I'd had in Charlotte, I did have some coworkers in the same area, but that's not always the case. I think, similar to s- uh, being in athletics, similar to for me in tennis, I always think of the quote, it's if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And in my role, I partner up with account executives. So I'm more on the technical side and the account executives more on the sales side. And I've always seen, you know, teams that are most successful, those AESC relationships have to be super strong. So I just try to lean into those that relationship that I've had with the different AEs or sales reps that I've had in the past several years. I've been grateful to have awesome coworkers, so it hasn't necessarily come at a struggle. But I think just leaning into those relationships and just doing the very basic things. Go read Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Just very basic stuff, and just being personal and showing up and putting your best foot forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's a good book. It's a very good one. I agree with that. Being authentically yourself, being a good person to other people, shouldn't be any different, sort of, to making friends at a bar or at a brewery or in a clubhouse. These are people too, and I'm sure there's a lot more of them in the same situation as you that are pretty nervous to be there, and looking for a friend. I kind of make the analogy when I've been at really big companies, and you get this whole new batch and cohort of people come in. It's almost like freshman year of college all over again.
Yeah.
Everyone's
Yeah.
looking to figure out who's going to be their friend, who's going to be that person they can, confide in when things are really tough. Because things will get really tough in your first few years of working. They will be really tough throughout your entire career, I'm sure, but I can only relate to the first few years. But having really good friends and people who you can talk to and be supported by, again, you're just making another community and tribe. So find
Yeah.
them, befriend them, be good to them, and they'll be good to you, I'm sure. But yeah, I want to pivot a little bit to back to tennis, and I want to talk about your relationship with tennis now. It's been 4 or 5 years since you've graduated. But yeah, talk to me through your relationship with tennis today. Do you still play it? I know you play a bit of pickleball, but do you watch it? What's your relationship with tennis now after you've retired?
Yeah. Oddly enough, I do not play tennis really at all. So I think the last time I played tennis was at an alumni uh, weekend, probably 4 years ago. So yeah, I do not really play tennis, which doesn't mean I hate tennis or don't like tennis by any means. I think tennis is one of the most challenging sports, and I mean I have a super high respect for the tennis players out there. I do watch some of the professional tournaments, mostly just the majors. I don't follow it super closely, so I feel like I'm a terrible tennis retiree. I haven't necessarily followed or continued on in my sport as probably many others have, or many think that I should. But I think instead I've made this transition into pickleball and golf. My tennis alternative is 100% pickleball. And I feel like an old man saying that, but it's a lot of fun. It's easier on the body. It's the same type of hand-eye coordination. I working with a racket sport, right? And I'm able to compete and play with players and find players a lot easier than it is to find players to play with in tennis. Um, so yeah, I've unfortunately, I would say, kind of, taken another road and haven't necessarily stayed super close to tennis, but I do still enjoy watching the sport, and I hope to teach my kids tennis in the future. I'll get back
Yeah,
on the court
well,
for that.
Yeah, you get back on the court for that, you'll be on the other side of the court hitting the ball over, saying,
Try
"Nope,
to
not
try
like
to
that."
remember how to play. Yeah,
Yeah,
me and my
exactly.
brother actually, my brother's in a similar situation. You know, he
Mhm.
plays pickleball and golf.
Yep.
That's really what I enjoy playing as well. And we were just saying this past weekend, we were like, we need to get back out on the court and just play like a set or play a match and just
Yeah.
see how terrible we'll be, and just have fun with it because it's been a while. Yeah,
Oh, that's funny. I have to admit, I think I've swung a baseball bat in the last 6 years, couple times, and I
yeah,
think I have been to only really my brother's baseball games, and maybe a couple of Charlotte Knight games, which is a AAA team here. And I don't think I've watched a Major League Baseball game outside of the World Series in years. I don't see
yeah.
that changing anytime soon. But yeah, talk to me a
I
little bit
heard
now.
I'll
Yeah.
share too, like, as part of that, it's such a weird thing because, you know, obviously it goes from tennis was my whole life. Like, I never really took a day off. Like, if I took a day off, it was like I felt like my timing was off, right? The next day, I was like, I gotta play every day, and then going from not playing at all. But there was someone that shared with me, and I feel like it just resonates so well, is it's a whole lot more fun playing something you can get better at than playing something you're only gonna get worse at. And for tennis, and for a lot of people that played potentially a Division One sport, it's like you're not gonna be able to stay at that level unless you're putting an insane amount of time and effort day after day. And the reality is we're not. So for me to go out and play tennis and feel bad or feel off about the way I'm hitting it, I have way more fun playing a different sport that I can continue to improve at.
No, I completely agree. Mishka is under the desk shuddering,
He
hitting the
agrees.
camera, so that's why I keep moving. um, but no, that's an incredible response. I do completely agree. I do wonder if that's why some guys don't play their sport socially afterwards. I know I just could not play baseball now, and every time I
Yeah.
swing a baseball bat, I think my brother and I went to hit the batting cages one time, and there was like a hit tracks, which is like they take your exit velocities and map out where the ball would go, etc. Had you have hit it in a real game. And I remember hitting off that for the first time in 5 6 years, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I hate myself!"
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it is just the ball is just not coming off the same, and this is just
Yeah.
frustrating. So I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm putting away the bat. I'm not picking this. I think I like literally turned around, hit the rest of the round left-handed, just so I wouldn't make myself more annoyed.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no. All right. So talk to me a little bit now, man. I know you've had some incredible life experiences since graduating and retiring, but you've got married, but you've also welcomed a little one into the world now. But talk to me about your new priorities now you're with your life after tennis.
Yeah, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I feel like from a pretty young age, like I've loved just the family aspect that I grew up in, and was super grateful to have a great family and a good family dynamic and good relationships with my siblings and so forth. And so, I was naturally excited for marriage. I had a good idea of what marriage could look like. Although my parents weren't perfect by any means, I understood that marriage was a gift from the Lord and could be an amazing blessing and thing, as well as fatherhood. And so that, I just entered that stage. It's weird saying that I have a daughter now, but I do. I have a daughter that's 3 weeks old. And I was just holding her a little bit ago, and she's the most precious thing on this earth, at least from me and Alicia's perspective, no doubt. So yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. It's such a journey. There are so many highs and lows. There is nothing perfect about marriage, and I'm going to assume there's not going to be a perfect little daughter, even though she looks perfect now. There'll be struggles, there'll be ups and downs, and it's just a journey that's so worth it. Like I've just seen it. It's such a an amazing journey. The highs make it just so awesome. So I've loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, I could totally I'm excited you're a girl dad, but I can understand she is definitely wrapped around your finger, I can already tell.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry, you are wrapped around her finger, I
Oh
apologize.
yeah.
But yes, no, that's very exciting. I think something that I would say to athletes graduating from college or retiring from the professional sport and moving into the next phase, I do think that there are a couple different ways to view it. And one of them is the initial way I think I took it, which was, oh my gosh, this is really scary. I don't know who I am. And I don't know what I am without baseball. But I think there's also the other side. I think you've done this really well. And I wish I had more of you in my life at this point. But it sounds like there is a completely alternative view to the transition out of sport, and that's the route that you took, which is I'm really excited about this new opportunity. I'm excited about family life in the future. I'm excited to start a new career. I'm excited to start a family, be a husband, and, eventually be a dad. Like, it sounds like you've had this incredible identity, and consistency throughout the transition. I mean, that's just incredible. But I mean, I say all that to say, like, what advice would you have to kids graduating from college and moving on from their sports?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to identity. Like as an athlete, it's super easy to put our identity in sports and in winning or losing and success and failure and um, it's a really big identity check, a really pivotal point once we're out of sports, being able to define your purpose and what you're wanting to do in life and I think my advice would be to sit down and think about that. Ask yourself some hard questions, ask others hard questions. Um, for me, I would encourage them to pursue a life of faith and read the Bible. You'll watch it come to life. You'll see, the ability to have a relationship with your Creator. And with that, you'll start learning and seeing what it looks like to live a life according to, the way we were designed to live it. But I would say the biggest advice, and I said this earlier, but my biggest advice would be don't do it alone. It's really lonely after getting out of your sport or it's really lonely just in general. I think a lot of people are really lonely. And I'm lonely at times too. But as part of that, build and lean into community. And that can be like-minded individuals that you enjoy playing pickleball with, or you enjoy playing golf with, or you go to church with, or whatever that may be. But lean into that and remind yourself too. The people that you surround yourself with are oftentimes going to be kind of the average. The average of those people will be who you turn into be. So choose a good community, but don't do it alone for sure, and ask the deep questions. It's worth it. Yeah.
Man, that is incredible. You are very wise, aren't you?
No, I
uh,
learned a lot along the way and had some awesome people in my life and have
yeah.
been grateful to yeah, have a relationship with the Lord since an early age, but really know kind of what that looks like more towards the end of high school. So
That's awesome.
it's a learning process. I don't have it all together, but learning a lot, alongside you, Louis. I was grateful to live in the same city as you for a little bit too. So
Yeah, it was a good 3, 4 years.
yeah,
But yeah, no. Man, this has been incredible. I really appreciate you jumping on here. I think a lot of people are going to be able to listen to this and learn a lot from it. You have some incredible advice, some very sage advice. So thank you for sharing that wisdom and imparting that upon me and the next generation of folks who are making the transition. But man, Brandon, I can't thank you enough for this. I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, thank you. And I'll catch you soon. But to everyone else, thank you very much for tuning in and enjoying this conversation with Brandon. He's absolutely terrific. And if you've got any questions, I'm sure you can find him on LinkedIn, Brandon Anconia. But thank you very much for joining us today. Looking forward to the next episode. We'll catch you then.
Thanks, Louis.